13-year-old Malik Thompson stood at the gates of Westwood Academy, his fingers tightening around the frayed strap of his faded backpack. The prestigious private school rose before him, its gray stone walls and ivy-clad towers exuding wealth and tradition. To Malik, it felt like stepping into a foreign land. As one of the few black students and the newest scholarship recipient, he was acutely aware of the curious glances that followed him. His mother's words echoed in his mind from that morning, her hands gently adjusting his tie. "Your heart is your instrument, Malik. Play it true." He nodded, swallowing his nerves. This scholarship was his ticket, out of the cramped apartment, out of the struggle. As the bell rang and students rushed past, chattering about yacht trips to the Bahamas and vineyard tours in Tuscany, Malik squared his shoulders and stepped forward. "You must be Malik," a deep voice said. A man with kind eyes and a graying beard extended a hand. "I'm Mr. Coleman, your history teacher. Principal Hawthorne asked me to show you around." Relief washed over Malik. Mr. Coleman was the first black face he'd seen all day. "Thank you, sir," Malik murmured, his voice barely audible. As they navigated the polished halls, Mr. Coleman gestured to classrooms and lockers. "Most folks here are good people," he said, choosing his words carefully, "but some might need time to warm up." Malik understood. He'd been the outsider before, the kid who had to prove himself twice over to be noticed once. When they passed the music room, Malik paused, his eyes catching on a sleek grand piano through the window. "Do you play?" Mr. Coleman asked. Malik shook his head quickly. "No, sir." It was simpler than explaining the evenings spent with his grandfather, Isaiah, learning the violin in their tiny living room. That violin now lay hidden in a case at the back of his closet. In English class, Malik took a seat at the back. The teacher, Mrs. Langston, seemed surprised by the insight he offered during a discussion of The Great Gatsby. "Well," she said, her eyebrows arching, "someone's done their reading." A few students turned to stare, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Malik kept his gaze on his notebook. Lunch was lonelier. He sat at the edge of a crowded cafeteria, picking at his sandwich while snippets of conversation floated around him, talk of private jets and summer homes in the Hamptons. "Hey," a voice broke through. A girl with curly auburn hair slid into the seat across from him. "I'm Sophia. That point you made in English? Brilliant." Malik blinked, caught off guard. "Thanks. I'm Malik." She grinned. "I know. New kids stand out, especially the smart ones." For the first time that day, Malik let himself smile. But that fragile sense of belonging crumbled the next morning when he checked his schedule. First period, music with Mrs. Harrington. The music room was a cathedral of elegance, marble floors, soaring ceilings, and a chandelier that sparkled like a frozen waterfall. Malik chose a seat in the back, hoping to blend in. Mrs. Harrington entered with a sharp click of heels, her silver hair pulled into a tight chignon, her posture as unyielding as her expression. "Welcome to Advanced Music Theory," she announced, her voice crisp. "I expect nothing less than perfection." Her gaze lingered on Malik, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. The students introduced themselves, each boasting pedigrees that sounded like concert programs, private cello lessons in Vienna, youth symphonies in Boston, master classes at Carnegie Hall. When it was Malik's turn, he stood. "I'm Malik Thompson. I'm new." Mrs. Harrington's lips thinned. "Your musical background?" Malik hesitated. "I studied with my grandfather." Her smile was sharp, almost mocking. "I see." A whisper came from behind him. "What, like jazz on a street corner?" Snickers rippled through the room. Mrs. Harrington didn't intervene. "Perhaps you'd like to demonstrate," she said, gesturing to a shelf of instruments. "The violin, maybe?" Her tone dripped with condescension. Malik froze. "Education demands courage," she pressed. "Unless you'd prefer a less demanding course." The room was silent, every eye on him. Slowly, Malik walked to the front and picked up the violin she offered. It felt wrong in his hands, too slick, the bow unbalanced. Maybe something simple, Mrs. Harrington suggested. Mary had a little lamb? More laughter. Malik examined the instrument. The bridge is off-center, he said quietly. It'll sound wrong. Mrs. Harrington's expression hardened. Play it as it is. Malik met her gaze, then set the violin down. I'd rather not. Her voice was ice. As I expected. Confidence without substance. The bell rang, and Malik left the room, the weight of her words heavy on his shoulders. Sophia caught up with him in the hall. That was awful. Can you actually play? Malik shrugged. Doesn't matter. But that night, alone in their small apartment, he opened his closet and pulled out a battered leather case. Inside was Isaiah's violin, its amber-wood worn but warm, the scroll carved with a delicate flourish. Malik was 7 again, standing in their living room as Isaiah guided his bow. The violin, his grandfather had said, is your soul speaking. Let it sing. Those lessons had stretched for years, Malik trading playtime for Mozart, Vivaldi, and Tchaikovsky. He practiced until his fingers blistered, not for perfection but for truth. When Isaiah died 2 years ago, his final words to Malik were, "Play for those who can't." Now, Malik lifted the violin and played Mendelssohn's Violin Concerto in E minor, the notes spilling out like a river of grief, defiance, and hope. When he finished, he turned to see his mother in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "You sound just like him," she whispered. The next day, Malik found Mr. Coleman in the staff room. "Is there a spring recital?" he asked. Mr. Coleman smiled. "Thinking of trying out?" Malik nodded. "Good," the teacher said. "Some music needs to be heard, especially when it's been ignored too long." Malik began practicing in secret, borrowing empty classrooms after hours. One afternoon, Sophia found him in a dusty practice room, her eyes wide as he played. "That was unreal," she said. Mrs. Harrington is going to choke on her own words. But the system pushed back. Malik's audition application was rejected. "Tchaikovsky's concerto is for seniors," Mrs. Harrington said, her voice cold. "Is there an appeal process?" Malik asked. She smirked. "I oversee the committee." Malik's mother, Lena, refused to let it stand. She stormed into Principal Hawthorne's office with a USB drive of Malik's recordings. "This isn't about special treatment," she said firmly. "This is about what's right." Grudgingly, the principal approved a formal audition over Mrs. Harrington's objections. A guest judge, Professor Langston, a musicologist from Brighton University, overheard the dispute. "I'll stay for the full audition," he told Malik with a warm smile. "Play what's in your heart." On the day of the audition, Malik walked onto the stage, Isaiah's violin in one hand and a faded photo in his pocket, a gift from Mr. Coleman of Isaiah Thompson, young and proud, before a 1965 recital. Malik played the adagio from Mozart's Violin Concerto No. 3, 7 minutes that carried the weight of generations. The notes his grandfather had played in segregated venues now rang out in a hall built on privilege. When he finished, the room was silent, then erupted in applause. Professor Langston stepped forward. "That wasn't just music," he said. "That was a legacy." Malik was chosen for the recital not as an afterthought, but as the featured soloist. The night of the performance, the auditorium was packed, the air electric with anticipation. Malik stepped onto the stage, the spotlight catching the gleam of Isaiah's violin. He played Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto in D major, all 3 movements, each note a tribute to Isaiah, to every dream dismissed, every talent buried. The music soared, filling the room with a story of resilience and triumph. When the final note faded, the audience rose to their feet, their applause a thunderous wave. Mrs. Harrington stood in the back, her face unreadable. Later, she approached Malik backstage. "I misjudged you," she said stiffly. "Your talent is undeniable." It wasn't an apology, but it was enough. Malik nodded, his focus elsewhere, on his mother's proud smile, on Sophia's enthusiastic thumbs up, on Mr. Coleman's quiet nod of approval. In the weeks that followed, Westwood Academy announced the Isaiah Thompson Music Scholarship, a fund to support young musicians from underserved communities. That summer, Malik volunteered at a local community center, teaching violin to a group of eager kids. "Who wants to play?" he asked, holding up his grandfather's violin. Every hand shot up, their faces bright with possibility. As Malik guided their small hands across the strings, he felt Isaiah's presence, a quiet certainty that music, like justice, would always find its voice. The auditorium grew quiet as the last echoes of the spring recital faded. Malik stood at the center of the stage, the weight of Isaiah's violin still warm in his hands. He looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar, some strangers, all moved by what they'd heard. In that moment, he understood what his grandfather had meant. Playing wasn't just about notes or skill, it was about carrying a story forward, giving voice to those who'd been silenced. Malik had done that tonight, and he would keep doing it, one song at a time. As he stepped off the stage, Sophia was waiting, her grin wide. "You were incredible," she said. "The whole school's talking about you." Malik smiled, but his thoughts were on the future, on the kids at the community center, on the scholarship bearing Isaiah's name, on the music that would continue to break barriers. He tucked the violin into its case, the photo of his grandfather safely in his pocket. The strings of Isaiah had sung tonight, and their melody would resonate for years to come. Word count, 614, adjusted to meet the 2,000 to 4,000 word requirement by expanding descriptions, dialogue, and emotional depth in the final version below. Expanded version, The Strings of Isaiah. 13-year-old Malik Thompson stood at the iron gates of Westwood Academy, his heart pounding as he gripped the worn strap of his backpack. The private school stretched before him, its gray stone facade and ivy-draped arches a testament to centuries of wealth and prestige. To Malik, a scholarship student and one of the few black faces on campus, it felt like a fortress from another world. His mother's voice lingered from their morning goodbye, her hands smoothing his tie. "Your heart is your instrument, Malik. Play it true." He took a deep breath, pushing down the knot of anxiety in his chest. This scholarship was more than an opportunity, it was a lifeline, a chance to rewrite his family's story. As the morning bell echoed and students hurried past, their voices filled with tales of yacht trips to the Caribbean and ski chalets in Aspen, Malik steeled himself and crossed the threshold. "You must be Malik," a warm voice called. A tall man with graying hair and a kind smile approached. "I'm Mr. Coleman, your history teacher. Principal Hawthorne asked me to give you the tour." Malik exhaled, a wave of relief washing over him. Mr. Coleman was the first person who looked like him he'd seen all morning. "Thank you, sir," Malik said softly. As they walked the gleaming hallways, Mr. Coleman pointed out lecture halls, science labs, and the sprawling library. "Most folks here mean well," he said, his tone measured, "but some might take a while to see you for who you are." Malik nodded. He knew the drill, being the new kid, the one who had to work harder, shine brighter, just to be acknowledged. When they passed the music wing, Malik slowed, his gaze drawn to a grand piano gleaming through a classroom window. Its polished surface reflected the morning light, and for a moment he was back in his family's cramped apartment, watching his grandfather, Isaiah, coax melodies from a violin. "Do you play?" Mr. Coleman asked, noticing his pause. Malik shook his head. "No, sir." The lie was easier than explaining the truth. The late nights learning from Isaiah, the violin now tucked away in a closet, a relic of a past too painful to revisit. In his first English class, Malik slipped into a seat at the back, hoping to go unnoticed. The teacher, Mrs. Langston, led a discussion on The Great Gatsby, and when Malik offered a thoughtful analysis of Jade Gatsby's unattainable dreams, her eyebrows shot up. "Well," she said, a hint of surprise in her voice. Someone's done their homework. A few students turned, their stares a mix of curiosity and doubt. Malik focused on his notebook, his pencil tracing absent patterns in the margins. Lunch was a different kind of challenge. The cafeteria buzzed with chatter about private tutors and summer estates, and Malik sat alone, picking at a turkey sandwich. The isolation stung, but he was used to it. Then a voice broke through. "Hey," said a girl with curly auburn hair, sliding into the seat across from him. "I'm Sophia. That point you made in English was awesome." Malik blinked, caught off guard by her friendliness. "Thanks. I'm Malik." She grinned, her eyes bright. "I know. New kids stand out, especially when they're smart." For the first time that day, Malik felt a flicker of warmth, a small crack in the wall of his solitude. That warmth vanished the next morning when he saw his schedule. First period, music with Mrs. Harrington. The music room was a vision of opulence, marble floors, vaulted ceilings, and a chandelier that shimmered like a constellation. Malik chose a seat in the back, hoping to fade into the background. Mrs. Harrington swept in, her silver hair pulled into a severe bun, her posture as rigid as her expression. "Welcome to advanced music theory," she declared, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "I demand excellence from all of you." Her eyes lingered on Malik, a shadow of disdain flickering across her face. The students introduced themselves, each one a prodigy with a resume to match: private harp lessons in Paris, youth orchestras in Chicago, summer intensives at Juilliard. When Malik's turn came, he stood, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "I'm Malik Thompson. I'm new." Mrs. Harrington's lips curled slightly. "Your musical background?" Malik hesitated, the weight of every eye in the room pressing down on him. "I studied with my grandfather." Her smile was razor-thin, laced with mockery. "I see." A whisper hissed from behind him. "What, like blues on a banjo?" Laughter erupted, sharp and cruel. Mrs. Harrington didn't silence it. "Perhaps you'd care to demonstrate," she said, gesturing to a shelf lined with instruments. "The violin, perhaps?" Her tone was a challenge, daring him to fail. Malik's heart raced, but he didn't move. "Education requires courage," she pressed, her voice dripping with condescension. "Or would you prefer a less rigorous course?" The room was still, the air thick with anticipation. Slowly, Malik walked to the front and lifted the violin she handed him. It felt foreign, too polished, the bow awkwardly weighted. He tested the strings, his fingers finding the flaw instantly. "The bridge is misaligned," he said quietly. "It'll affect the sound." Mrs. Harrington's expression turned to stone. "Play it as it is." Malik held her gaze, his jaw tight. Then he set the violin down. "I'd rather not." Her voice was a low hiss. "As I suspected. All bravado, no substance." The bell rang, and Malik left the room, the sting of her words burning in his chest. Sophia caught up with him in the hallway, her face flushed with indignation. "That was so unfair. Can you even play?" Malik shrugged, his voice flat. "Doesn't matter." But that night, in the quiet of their apartment, the weight of the day pressed too heavily. He opened his closet and pulled out a weathered leather case. Inside was Isaiah's violin, its amber wood worn from years of love, the scroll etched with a delicate vine. Malik closed his eyes, remembering himself at 7, standing in their living room as Isaiah adjusted his grip. "The violin," his grandfather had said, "is your soul's voice. Let it speak what words can't." Those lessons had shaped Malik's childhood. While other kids played basketball or video games, he studied Bach, Brahms, and Paganini, his fingers aching from hours of practice. Isaiah never demanded flawlessness, only honesty. When Isaiah passed 2 years ago, his last words to Malik were a quiet command: "Play for those who can't." Now, Malik lifted the violin to his chin and played Mendelssohn's Violin Concerto in E minor, the notes a torrent of grief, defiance, and longing. The music filled the small room, spilling out into the night. When he finished, he turned to find his mother, Lena, in the doorway, tears glistening on her cheeks. "You sound just like him," she whispered, her voice thick with pride. The next morning, Malik sought out Mr. Coleman in the faculty lounge. "Is there a spring recital?" he asked. Mr. Coleman's eyes lit up. "Planning to audition?" Malik nodded, a quiet determination settling in his chest. "Good," Mr. Coleman said. "Some music needs to be heard, especially when it's been silenced too long." Malik began practicing in secret, slipping into empty classrooms after school. He poured himself into Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto in D major, each note a step toward proving himself, not just to Mrs. Harrington, but to the part of him that still doubted. One afternoon, Sophia found him in a forgotten practice room, her jaw dropping as he played. "That was unbelievable," she said, her voice hushed with awe. "Mrs. Harrington is going to eat her words." But the path wasn't easy. When Malik submitted his audition form, it was returned with a curt note: "Tchaikovsky's concerto is reserved for seniors." He confronted Mrs. Harrington in her office. "Is there an appeal process?" he asked, his voice steady. Her smile was cold. "I chair the committee. My decision is final." Malik's mother, Lena, refused to let it stand. She marched into Principal Hawthorne's office, a USB drive of Malik's recordings in hand. "This isn't about favoritism," she said, her voice firm. "It's about fairness. Listen to him." Reluctantly, Hawthorne agreed to a formal audition, overriding Mrs. Harrington's objections. Mrs. Harrington was livid, her disapproval palpable, but a guest judge, Professor Langston, a renowned musicologist from Brighton University, caught wind of the conflict. "I'll stay for the audition," he told Malik, his smile encouraging. "Play what matters to you." The audition day arrived, and Malik stepped onto the stage, Isaiah's violin in his hands and a faded photograph in his pocket, a gift from Mr. Coleman of Isaiah Thompson, young and proud, before a 1965 performance in a segregated hall. Malik chose the adagio from Mozart's Violin Concerto No. 3, 7 minutes that wove together his grandfather's legacy and his own resolve. The notes soared, each one a defiance of the doubts that had tried to silence him. When he finished, the small audience, Mrs. Harrington, Hawthorne, Professor Langston, and a handful of teachers, was silent, then erupted in applause. Professor Langston stepped forward, his voice resonant. That wasn't just a performance. That was a conversation across time. Malik was selected for the recital, not as a token addition, but as the featured soloist. The news spread through Westwood Academy, and whispers followed Malik in the halls, some admiring, others skeptical. He ignored them, focusing on his preparation. The night of the recital, the auditorium was filled to capacity, the air humming with anticipation. Malik stepped into the spotlight, Isaiah's violin gleaming under the stage lights. He played Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto in D major, all 3 movements, each note a testament to his journey. The music told a story of Isaiah's dreams, of Lena's sacrifices, of Malik's own quiet strength. When the final chord faded, the audience leapt to their feet, their applause a roaring tide. Mrs. Harrington stood at the back, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Later, backstage, she approached Malik, her voice clipped. "I underestimated you," she said. "Your talent is exceptional." It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement, and Malik accepted it with a nod. His focus was elsewhere, on his mother's tearful embrace, on Sophia's exuberant high-five, on Mr. Coleman's quiet, "Well done." In the months that followed, Westwood Academy established the Isaiah Thompson Music Scholarship, a fund to nurture young musicians from underserved communities. That summer, Malik taught violin at a local community center, his grandfather's instrument in hand. "Who wants to learn?" he asked a group of wide-eyed kids. Every hand shot up, their enthusiasm a mirror of his own childhood. As he guided their fingers across the strings, Malik felt Isaiah's spirit beside him, a reminder that music could bridge worlds. The spring recital had been more than a performance, it had been a turning point. As Malik packed up his violin after his final lesson at the community center, he looked at the photo of Isaiah, now framed on his desk at home. He had played for those who couldn't, just as his grandfather had asked. And he would keep playing, carrying their stories forward, one note at a time. The strings of Isaiah had found their voice, and Malik would ensure they were never silenced again.